Ariel Sokol's oral presentation, take a gazillion. Action. So the way I think it makes the most sense to do this oral presentation is to read the prompt and then translate it into my own words and then discuss it and answer it. So here it goes. For your final exam, you will be given an oral presentation. You will give an oral presentation. The whole presentation should run approximately 15 minutes. The first 10 minutes, give or take, should cover the following. 1. In your oral presentation, speak about how the specific authors and artists we've discussed in this course deal with truth. Then use inductive reasoning to make some broader generalizations and theories about truth in fiction and art. I'll keep going. This means moving from specific observations from the work studied in class to broader generalizations and theories. Informally, we sometimes call this a bottoms-up approach. Begin with specific observations and measure with patterns and regularities you've detected. Formulate some tentative hypotheses, and finally end up developing some general conclusions or theories about our topic. Okay. In my own words, I think what this means, is like in a sentence or two, is basically find something specific amongst the work that we've studied. Find something specific, and then figure out how to apply it to a broader topic, and come out with a deeper thought that applies to something more general instead of just that specific small topic. I'm going to actually start by giving my conclusion and then show you the specific observations and measures I used to come to that conclusion. So my conclusion is that authors use storytelling when they're, talking about whether the event actually happened or not, but storytelling in general to emphasize particular parts of real life. And I didn't explain that so well, but I'll try again. Our authors who are writing fiction stories are able to use fiction, like a story that isn't necessarily true, to then emphasize certain aspects of something that really is true. So I'll use an example before I then speak. I'll use an example that relates to me in real life before I then point to specifics in our text. So I guess I'll use basketball because I'm a big basketball fan. A lot of my analogies and stories tend to go directly to basketball. But let's just say someone told me to write a movie about, or to write a book about the life of an NBA player, right? So I'm writing an autobiography in a way about a fictional NBA player. Because I'm able to make it fiction, I'm not necessarily writing word for word exactly what happened in real life. And when you do so, you give yourself the ability to not necessarily exaggerate. I would say exaggerate is the wrong word, but more emphasize the points that matter to then bring out a deeper thought. So, for example, if I'm writing not an autobiography, that probably wasn't the right example, but let's say I'm writing a story, not an autobiography, a story about an NBA player, right? And I myself was once an NBA player, so I have a pretty good understanding of what it's like to be an NBA player. And the point that I want my readers to take away from this is that fame doesn't always make you happy. That's like the point I want my readers to take away. Now, if I gave them, I am an actual NBA player in this hypothetical situation. The person writing the story is an actual NBA player. So if I just told them exactly what happened during my career, they're going to hear a lot of unnecessary points if the conclusion that I want them to come to is that fame doesn't make you happy. They're going to listen to a lot about X's and O's in the game. They're going to listen to a lot about what I ate for breakfast in order to, and what my eating habits were like, what I did in practice. But in reality, the point that I'm trying to prove is that fame doesn't always make you happy. So in the story that this person's writing, it would make more sense to write about maybe the times where a lot of people would come up to the NBA player on the street and be like, hey, like, we love you, can we take a picture with you, yada, yada, yada. But deep down, the player still feels empty inside. So certain points that, because the author is trying to prove a specific point, he doesn't necessarily need to say everything that actually happened. It makes more sense to just pinpoint specific parts of his career and put them into stories in order to prove his overall point. I hope that made sense. If not, listen to it a couple times and I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. Anyways, the specific piece of work that I'm going to use from our class to prove this point is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Now, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, the story is about a narrator who is named Marlowe, and Marlowe is telling a story about his past life. So I know, just to be clear, the narrator is actually telling a story about something that happened a while ago. So the story isn't taking place in real time, even from the narrator's perspective. Now, Marlowe's telling a story about how when he was younger, he was a merchant. He was working on a ship for what's called the company, and he goes down the Congo River to Africa in order to meet someone named Colonel Kurtz, who was a formal colonel who had gone rogue. And the details of the actual story aren't necessarily even so important for the point I'm trying to make. But either way, what is important is Joseph Conrad himself actually was a merchant on a ship before he wrote the story. So he's drawing from his own personal experiences, and then bringing them to the story to then prove his larger point. Now, in his case, um, as I said a second ago, the factors that appear in Heart of Darkness with Marlowe accompany many of the same rules and ideas as Conrad did in his real life. Now, Conrad had observed firsthand the systematic exploitation of the Congo areas, and had operated the systematic exploitation of the Congo area, and he literally operated the same type of river industry as the sailor or soldier in the story. However, Conrad's actual story manages to surpass the significance. Well, go back 10 sentences. The narrator Marlowe's story actually surpasses the significance of Conrad's own lived experience, because he's able to convey the deeper truths about the historical context of human nature by, instead of just saying actually what happened, like, oh, I was in Africa, I saw slaves who were chained working to get ivory so that the English people could trade it. Instead of just saying that, by storytelling, he then has the ability to add art to it. All right, we're at the 7-minute-ish mark, and I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go from here. And I kind of feel like I've kind of been like just putting words together so far, anyways. So I'm just going to try and take a little break to read what I've written down and maybe put some stuff together. Okay, I'm going to pause it right here, do a little more work, and then send you a video for the final 8 minutes of the presentation.